All right, we can go ahead and get started. Thank you for everyone joining us this morning for Cultiv8 Hemp Solutions Virtual Power Plant, 24/7 renewable energy and carbon removal services. So here are some of the topics that we will be discussing today, including the greenhouse gas emissions problem. Of course, who we are as Cultiv8, our renewable energy virtual power plant, our products and services, which includes our renewable hemp diesel, our power generation and carbon removal services, and of course, competitors, our agreements, and some of the benefits that we provide to our clients. So my name is Stephen Fance. I'm the CEO and Chief Technology Officer of Cultiv8 Hemp Solutions. And I started my career, I studied mathematics at Morehouse College here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I started my career working at Lockheed Martin at the age of 19, building the C-130J airplane, one of the most successful cargo planes in aeronautics history. And from there, started my own consulting firm, providing IT infrastructure services to large Fortune 500 companies. And from there, that firm molded into Cultiv8 Hemp Solutions, in which we use the same technologies into farming. So the big problem, of course, that everyone is aware of is climate change. Anything that moves, from the vehicles that we drive to the electricity that we use in our homes, to the farmers, all of the tractors, all of the fuel they use, all the chemicals, all of these contribute to climate change. And as a problem, carbon dioxide and other emissions have been stored in our atmosphere, and unfortunately is making the Earth increase in temperature and is causing most of these storms and wildfires and floods all over the world. So this is a view of the global renewable energy market. This is from the IEA, and essentially it says that right now, renewable energy is actually bigger than the traditional oil and gas market, essentially because demand is increasing, especially after COVID. People are moving more, buying more, spending more. Also, population increases. More people are getting access to the internet. So essentially, over to the next 2030 and beyond at 2050, the market is essentially going to not only include oil and gas, but also huge renewable energy push is taking place. Ever since also in the US, this current administration has been pushing for renewable energy for transition. And the great thing is that now all of these technologies are cheaper than oil and gas. So a little bit about Cultiv8 Hemp Solutions. So Cultiv8 is a minority-owned renewable energy development firm that helps utilities, corporations, and municipalities reach carbon negative emissions by supplying them renewable hemp fuel, renewable electricity, and carbon removal services. So this is a visual of our 24/7 renewable energy virtual power plant. And essentially, it includes our portfolio of power generators, ran off our renewable hemp diesel that's grown by our hemp farmers, and also includes other renewable sources such as offshore wind farms, solar panels, and we're always looking for additional technologies to add to the portfolio and looking to work with manufacturers who can provide that. So what's a virtual power plant? So Cultiv8's renewable virtual power plant essentially is a blockchain network of the internet in which we use refineries, renewable generators, and energy storage systems such as batteries, hydrogen fuel cells, and we integrate all of them together on a platform in which we're able to distribute that renewable energy to the power grid. So this is a visual of a typical company's greenhouse gas emissions on scopes 1, 2, and 3. Now, with this scope, what we're able to see is scope 1, direct emissions. You know, these are the type of emissions that are in the company's control, such as the fuel that they buy, that they put in their vehicles to the power generators, the fuel they use in those. So this is everything that is in your operational control. And then scope 2, the indirect emissions, this is essentially the electricity that companies buy from utilities. And you know, most utilities use natural gas, and some parts of the world still coal, heat, steam. So all of those are essentially quote unquote dirty sources of energy. And that is what contributes to scope 2. Now, scope 3 essentially includes all of scope 1 and 2, but it also includes mostly your vendors, your suppliers, all of the airlines, business travel that you use, the waste management. This is the hardest scope for companies to measure, essentially because you would have to literally talk to every vendor supplier that you utilize throughout your supply chain and then have them report those emissions to you, which, you know, unfortunately, the only thing that companies are able to do is to estimate by using models. So let's dive a little bit into scope 1 emissions. So scope 1 emissions, as mentioned, is the direct emissions generated from the facilities, including the offices, the stores, data centers, customer experience. This is the fuel that goes in your trucks and your generators. So our product to supply for scope 1 is our renewable hemp fuel. So the great thing about renewable hemp fuel is able to replace diesel, gasoline, and jet fuel. The great thing about it is carbon negative, and it is cheaper than fossil fuels because we have an integrated supply chain. We work with farmers and we provide the seed, help them with the machinery, provide the technology to grow the hemp, and we're able to track it from seed to, as we in the fuel industry, to cradle. And so from the full supply chain, we're able to increase energy security. And by working with farmers from across the country, we have an unlimited supply. What is renewable hemp diesel? So renewable hemp diesel is an advanced biofuel that meets the same standards as ASTM D975 and also the ASTM 6751 for biodiesel. And this is specifically able to replace diesel by able to integrate into the existing pipeline system. And it makes it easy to incorporate into the stream. And so the great thing is that both products, both our carbon negative and renewable hemp diesel, is able to be blended with traditional. And also the renewable hemp diesel is able to be used in any diesel engine around the world without modifications. and they are all compliant with OEM specs. And as of right now, we are currently reaching out to many of the major OEMs, sharing our data. And so we are, ideally is to be able to do actual tests on all of these major OEMs. And what we will do is once we get there, we will broadcast those tests live with those OEMs. But that will be hopefully later down this year. And this is an analysis of renewable hemp diesel. And it compares to, this is for ASTM standards. And this is also available via our LinkedIn page, our website, in which you can download our renewable hemp diesel analysis and fact sheet. So these are the main locations of our terminals that we will be supplying our renewable hemp products. We're focusing, especially in Texas and Louisiana, and the Gulf Coast. Much of what most people don't know is that 50% of the US oil and gas infrastructure, the fuel comes from the Gulf Coast. Most of the refineries are all there, the pipeline, and then also, of course, the ocean infrastructure. Everything is pretty much there and ready to go, which is why it was key for us to create a fuel that was able to be blended into current infrastructure so that there are no costs that come to our clients and infrastructure partners. And of course, we have a major demand in California with their LCFS program. They've essentially created the framework for other states to follow. And of course, by being able to supply fuel in California, essentially we're able to also utilize the tax credits that come with the state. And so other states, most states do not have it, but we do foresee that with the current administration and how other states are adapting and learning about renewable fuels, is that they will adapt them. But the great thing is because we're still able to supply our fuel at a competitive price to traditional fuel, we're able to supply nationwide as opposed to our competitors. They're only supplying in California and a few other states. Scope 2 emissions. These are the indirect emissions from purchased electricity required to power all facilities. So these are your utilities that you pay your bill to every month. The great thing is that we're working with a number of utilities. We started the process of introducing ourselves, our product, and ideally, we will be working with every utility in the country to be able to provide a turnkey service for our large corporation clients. And so what is renewable electricity? Renewable electricity is electricity generated from natural sources such as the sun, wind, or organic plant and waste materials such as hemp biomass. What are renewable electricity credits? These are environmental attributes of electricity generated from renewable sources. So one renewable energy credit equals 1 megawatt hour of electricity. And based on the generation, the technology type, age, and the geographic location and time of that generation. So we are building manufacturing facilities in many of the small towns that were old oil and gas manufacturing sites, such as like the Port Arthurs or the Corpus Christi, the Galvestons, the Lake Charles. And these cities still have the infrastructure to be able to build and service offshore wind farms in the Gulf of Mexico. And some of the great advantages of the Gulf of Mexico, it's a great climate as well, which is also great in terms of maintenance when it comes to these offshore wind farms. And by utilizing hemp, we'll be able to replace the materials that most of these big manufacturers are currently using, we are being able to manufacture 100% sustainable offshore wind farms. So here are some of the construction operation ports that we are eyeing to build these construction sites and for operations. And the great thing is that the Gulf of Mexico is an excellent geographical place, especially on the west side, closer to Corpus Christi, on Texas side, is great wind speeds. When you're looking at wind farms, you're looking at mostly wind speeds. In the U.S., the geographical places that you do have major wind speeds, of course, is the East Coast, all the way down pretty much the East Coast, more so in the Northeast, and then on California coastline, and then the Gulf of Mexico, and then also the Great Lakes, and of course in the Midwest, for which we'll be also working with farmers who would like the wind turbines installed on their land. But more so, we're focusing on deep offshore wind because by utilizing floating wind farms, we're able to get even more wind speed in deeper waters. And then also by going in deeper waters, we're able to, as you see the federal state water boundary, once you go beyond the state water boundary, it's less red tape. And so we are we're looking to work with the Department of Energy and other government entities to help streamline some of those hurdles that could arise. And this is a typical system design that we will implement. And as mentioned, we have these wind turbines kind of as a grid format in which they are all interconnected. And as mentioned, in the Gulf of Mexico, because the oil and gas have deep offshore accessibility from the platforms into the vessels that maintain them, we'll be utilizing that same design and also working with connecting subsea cables from the wind farms to the grid directly to the connection. And in addition to in immediate short term, what we're offering our large clients is we're installing diesel generators in geographical locations where our clients have the biggest demand. So if you're a data center, for example, we will be able to install those generators in those areas and supply the renewable hemp diesel for those generators, allowing you to also get immediate short term. And with our offshore wind, will allow a diversity in renewable technologies. And this is our main technology we're pushing for our utility clients. So the advantages and challenges. So some of the advantages is that, the Gulf of Mexico is shallow water. So, we're able to service the substation construction, substations, and which allows construction costs to be reduced. As mentioned, proximity to oil and gas supply chains, by utilizing the supply chains that's already there and their vendors and marine vessels makes this scalable quickly. And mentioned the mild climate, great weather, so that decreases operating costs. Now, some of the challenges are, of course, hurricanes. There are risk of major hurricanes that can increase the substructure costs. But the great thing is that we are implementing preventative measures and redundancy systems are in place to reduce those risks. So the reason why we are building so many manufacturing facilities all across the Gulf of Mexico and the wind farms that will be connecting to the grid across all those towns is so that we're able to create a redundant system. And this is where energy security comes in, is that, yes, hurricanes will happen. We have to expect them and prepare for them. And by creating redundancy, by having thousands of wind turbines plus diesel generators ran off of our renewable hemp diesel. And then also with hemp, we're able to generate renewable natural gas and also integrate that into the grid. And by implementing all of these multiple technologies across geographical locations, we're able to guarantee renewable energy at all times. In addition, because we are producing so much renewable electricity, we have roughly about 100 gigawatts that we are projecting of customer demand over the next 5 to 10 years. And we will be able to essentially generate hydrogen and be able to generate hydrogen at a competitive price to where it actually financially makes sense. And with this hydrogen, we'll be able to sell this directly to steel companies. And this is, one of the big issues, of course, is how we're going to, decrease emissions in the construction industry. And so steel is a major problem. And so by creating and generating renewable hydrogen, we're able to provide this. Scope 3 emissions, and these are the emissions, as mentioned, that are by your vendors, your corporate travel, and essentially what makes your supply chain work. So these are some carbon removal strategies that have been approached by scientists and big technologists around. We have, of course, managing forest. We have soil sequestration, and then we have the more geosphere technologies, such as using building, technology, very expensive projects, and capturing, the carbon dioxide. So some of the things you have to look at across the board is, water quality, water quantity, food supply, biodiversity, and also how much carbon dioxide is actually sequestered, and the cost of it. How are you also able to measure it? The big problem is, measuring is really is horrible across the board. However, by utilizing technology fully integrated, we're able to. And so we essentially are in the soil sequestration category, in which the great thing about hemp is, when you look at the soil sequestration part, the only bad portion of it is the measurement and verification. And so by utilizing our technology, we use blockchain technology, and working with the farmers from seed all the way to end product, we're able to track and verify and measure carbon dioxide by installing sensors throughout our full supply chain. And then not only that, by working with us, with our clients, we work with your suppliers and provide the same services. So now we go into hemp as a carbon removal service. So carbon removal services are a set of activities that removes an organization's greenhouse gas emissions and able to store that carbon dioxide. And that's the key, is how do you store the carbon dioxide if you're able to absorb it? And so we essentially, on the left is our carbon intensity report, which we just finalized, and it is currently being peer reviewed and being submitted to a number of state and government agencies. So this is a typical carbon intensity fuel pathways that are out there. We have diesel is essentially roughly 100 grams per megajoule is diesel carbon intensity score. Some of the competitors out there use old grease from restaurants and donut shops, and then they clean it and create renewable diesel. Well, the problem is that the energy and processes that was used to make that oil has still a carbon footprint. And so the great thing about working with us and with hemp is that we found that hemp absorbs 1.25 tons of carbon dioxide per acre, or per 1 ton that grows, and 10 tons is grown per acre. And essentially what we found is with our fuel, for every 5 gallons that is burned, that when you measure from the farmer growing the hemp, the carbon dioxide is stored in the hemp stalk, and we're able to grow it every 3 months. And that hemp stalk, we break it down, decorticate it, and we use the waste as fuel. And the waste of the rest of the waste we use to be able to build other materials. And so we found that from growing hemp all the way to it burning, we have a negative carbon intensity score of 1700. And where do we store that carbon dioxide? We store it in hempcrete. And hempcrete, we were able to use to build tiny hemp homes. And the advantages of it is that with hempcrete is that over time, it continues to absorb toxins that's in the air. And it's also fireproof. So by building sustainable hemp homes, storing them, we're able to actually create a living security. And these are just kind of stock photos of what the tiny hemp homes will look like. But essentially, they are beautiful designs that comes with porches and internally, interior-wise, kind of with the same amenities that we would expect in some of the higher living lifestyles, but we make it affordable. So here's a competitive landscape of Cultiv8 versus our other competitors. The difference is that we not only supply renewable fuel, but we supply renewable electricity and carbon removal services. And essentially, a renewable power purchase agreement is the contract we use between ourselves and our clients to supply renewable electricity, fuel, and carbon removal services. So this is what an overview of the product and services that we would send to a company that needs our service. And so let's say a typical big Fortune 500 company, some of the cloud service providers, they'll maybe emit roughly about 9 million, 10 million metric tons of carbon dioxide a year. And so when you think about how long they've been in business, they may have been in business for, I don't know, since the 70s, and they have to go essentially get all of that carbon dioxide they've emitted. And so by working with us, we supply the hemp diesel for scope 1 to fuel trucks and generators. We supply the electricity as generators on the grid and utilizing our offshore wind farm. And in scope 3, utilizing our carbon negative fuel, we're able to not only reduce in the carbon per year currently, but able to go back as a carbon negative product. As mentioned, some client benefits. By utilizing renewable energy, we're basically provide a turnkey white glove service for large corporations to remove carbon emissions. Sales pipeline essentially is sending an email, or LinkedIn has been excellent for meeting new clients. We send out a proposal, we have pricing meetings, and we send agreements out, and they send us due diligence from how much generation they produce from electricity, how much fuel they consume, and we send them a proposal. And to buy our fuel, electricity, or carbon removal services, you can email us at sales@cultiv8hs.com or click our Calendly link, in which we will provide at the end of this presentation. If you have any questions, what you can do is you can reach out to us via email at info@cultiv8hs.com. You can reach us in LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter as well, and we will provide the answers as soon as possible. Thank you, and that concludes our presentation.